This is the VOA Special English Development Report. UNICEF is appealing for more than $1 billion in aid for women and children around the world. The United Nations Children's Fund has released its Humanitarian Action Report for 2010. The report lists 28 countries and territories with some of the world's most pressing crises affecting women and children. Haiti was considered to be in crisis long before the earthquake in January. The Deputy Executive Director of UNICEF, Hilda Johnson, says the quake has only made the need for aid more immediate. But she says children all over the world have the right to the same assistance. The Humanitarian Action Report discusses several issues that UNICEF says increasingly threaten the basic rights of women and children. It says climate change has caused droughts and food insecurity in many areas. High food prices and the global financial crisis of 2008-2009 have only added to poverty and malnutrition. And armed conflict continues to threaten the lives of millions. Hilda Johnson says children are always the most affected by conflicts and disasters. They face an increased risk of abuse, including sexual violence and other serious rights violations. UNICEF deals with about 200 emergencies around the world every year. The greatest need last year was in sub-Saharan Africa. The report says drought, food insecurity, and civil unrest affected about 24 million people. Violence and displacements of people were especially bad in Sudan, Chad, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the Central African Republic. In Asia, UNICEF expects its financial assistance needs to more than double this year. This is partly the result of adding Pakistan and the Philippines to the latest report. In Pakistan, it says more than 2 million people have been forced from their homes by the conflict in the Swat Valley and other areas of the Northwest. And in the Philippines, more than 200,000 people are still living in shelters after severe storms last year. This year's UNICEF report talks about the value of public and private partnerships in helping children and families in emergencies. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report. For a link to the UNICEF report listing the 28 countries and territories in crisis, go to voaspecialenglish.com.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that businesses cannot control the rights to human genes in their natural state. Patients' rights groups are calling the decision a victory. The court, however, left room to protect patent ownership rights related to man-made genes. The court decided on a case involving the biotechnology company Myriad Genetics. The company had identified human genes that increase a woman's risk for breast cancer and ovarian cancer. The company applied for and was given exclusive rights over the use of those genes. Attorney Sandra Park works with the American Civil Liberties Union. She says the United States Patent and Trademark Office has been approving patents on some DNA for 30 years. The problem, she says, was that Myriad used its patent rights to stop other laboratories from providing genetic testing, although those laboratories used different methods. Sandra Park says that caused genetic testing for increased risk of breast and ovarian cancer to cost more because of the lack of competition. It also prevented patients from getting a second medical opinion based on some other test. The Supreme Court has now rejected this type of patent. All 9 justices agreed that because genes are products of nature, they cannot be owned by one business. Health activists say the ruling will lower costs and improve testing for breast and ovarian cancer. Myriad Genetics also patented man-made versions of the genes. The Supreme Court said patents on such man-made genes are permitted because they do not exist in nature. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
This is the VOA Special English Development Report. The Obama administration has launched the first in a series of projects to support entrepreneurs in Muslim communities worldwide. The Global Entrepreneurship Program will provide advice and other help for businesses to succeed. Partnerships between public and private organizations aim to assist with everything from securing financing to writing a business plan. The first project is being launched in Egypt. A second project in Indonesia is expected to follow soon. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton talked about the programs at a presidential summit on entrepreneurship. She said, "Now these initiatives comprise a first wave of programs to promote global entrepreneurship, but they reflect the Obama administration's commitment to a new approach to development, one based on investment, not aid, on supporting local leadership and ideas rather than imposing our own." More than 250 people attended the 2-day summit meeting held in Washington in late April. Most were from majority Muslim countries. President Obama promised to hold a summit on entrepreneurship in his speech to the Islamic world last June in Cairo. He says the business market is the most powerful force for economic growth and lifting people out of poverty. He also says entrepreneurship is an area where countries can learn from each other. Tim Kaine is with the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, a nonprofit in the United States that works to increase entrepreneurship worldwide. He says the World Bank has found that simpler rules and other regulatory reforms make it easier to do business in the Middle East. The Global Entrepreneurship Program in Egypt will create several partnerships between American and Egyptian groups. These include the Egyptian Junior Business Association and the American University in Cairo. The United States Agency for International Development has a team of entrepreneurs in Egypt to supervise the program. The Obama administration plans to expand the program to 12 countries within the next 2 years. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report. Transcripts, MP3s, and podcasts are at voaspecialenglish.com. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and iTunes at VOA Learning English.
This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. The Obama administration is leading an effort to deploy what some people call liberation technology in repressive countries. The New York Times reported that these efforts include shadow internet and mobile phone systems. These are secret networks designed to operate independently of a government's control. Dissidents in the Middle East, North Africa, and other countries are increasingly using the internet, social media, and mobile phones. Some governments have taken steps to block or spy on their communications. Officials in Egypt shut down internet connections in February in a failed attempt to stop democracy protests. The Syrian government recently took similar action. Ken Berman is the Director of Information Security at the Broadcasting Board of Governors, the parent agency of Voice of America. He says the State Department is looking at ways for cyber dissidents and activists to communicate among themselves using independent networks. The New York Times reported that one of these projects is known as Internet in a Suitcase. The idea is to put equipment in a suitcase that could be secretly transported across a border. Then it could be used to quickly establish a wireless internet connection over a wide area. Another project seeks to avoid Taliban interference with cell phone networks in Afghanistan by using towers on American bases. VOA has its own anti-censorship programs led by Ken Berman. He says, what we're trying to do is give tools to allow people in countries that have hostile regimes to circumvent, to go around the blockage or the filtering that their own governments do. During a speech in February, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton called internet freedom one of the grand challenges of our time. The State Department says its efforts are aimed at supporting free speech and human rights, not overthrowing governments. Ken Berman says whether or not these two things can be separated is a source of continuing debate. An educated population is what I think these tools strive for. Whether that will lead to government change, whether that will lead to internal reform, it depends on the country. There are so many dynamics in play in so many different countries, it's hard to know what effect open information has. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. You can download MP3s of our programs and get podcasts at voaspecialenglish.com.